I should like to call your attention this evening to the words which are to be found in the first chapter of the book of Job, and I shall read from verse 20 to the end of the chapter, verses 20, 21, and 22 in the first chapter of the book of Job. Then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell down upon the ground and worshipped and said, Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this, Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. It seems to me that there is no more ridiculous or futile, or indeed puerile attitude towards the Bible, or criticism of the Bible, than that which regards it as something that is remote from life, something which is not practical, something which is entirely divorced from the practicalities of life. Now, there are many people who take that view of the Bible. Oh, they say it's a book which has got a good deal of beautiful poetry in it. At certain times, no doubt, it's soothing and comforting and very beautiful and wonderful, but they say, after all, it's an old book and it's out of date. And it doesn't help us in the practical business of living life in 1953. It's all right for those who were brought up on it, perhaps, and who've made a habit and a custom of reading it all their lives, but they just feel that it's somehow or another far away from life, as it actually and rarely is. There are many people who take up that attitude towards the Bible, and that's why they've never read it. And that's why especially they've never read the Old Testament. They feel that it's something, as I say, which represents a mere stage in the development of men, something which comes from the more primitive stages in the development of men, and therefore clearly something which has nothing to give us at this present time. Now, the Bible's own claim is to give the lie direct to that view. The Bible's claim, indeed, is this, that it, and it alone, can teach us how to live truly, happily, successfully, and triumphantly in this present world at this present hour. And that is certainly the claim which I would make for it. That is why I believe it. That is why I preach it. I want to put that quite clearly and as forcefully as I can. The claim which we make for this book is that it is God's book, and that the Bible alone, exclusively, is the only book that can teach us and enable us and show us the way to live life fully, to live it truly, to live it happily, to live it successfully, to live it triumphantly. I say that because the Bible is the only book which enables us to face all the facts of life. And again, I'm making this comprehensive claim. The Bible, I say, helps us to understand life from every aspect, from every angle. There is nothing about life that it doesn't deal with. It deals with the origin of life and of man in life and in this world. It gives us a meaning and an explanation of life. It explains the problems and the difficulties, the unhappinesses of life, and all these other things. The Bible has explanations of all those things. And at the same time, I say, it tells us how we can be delivered and extricated from our involvement in these problems and difficulties and failures. And indeed, it goes further and teaches us not only about life in this world, but our life after we've left this world, and go on beyond the veil to that unknown eternity that lies beyond it. Now, that is the Bible's claim. All other teachings, and the Bible tells us this also, all other teachings are partial. Now, I care not what particular teaching you're interested in. I suggest to you that it's always a partial teaching. To some people, you see, politics is everything. Well, politics is very important, but it doesn't deal with the whole of life. Politics is all right in its realm and in its sphere, but when you're suddenly face to face with a disaster or with death, politics has got nothing to tell you. Other men are interested in art, and others are interested in science. You are familiar with these various interests and these various ways of looking at life that are popular at the present time. What I'm saying about them all is that every single one of them is partial. It may tell you a great deal about certain aspects of life. It may be very helpful to you and very useful to you at certain points, in certain places, or at certain times in your life. But there isn't another single view of life in this world which embraces the whole of life, which caters for every conceivable eventuality in life, save the Bible itself. Now, I make bold to make that assertion without any fear of contradiction. And it is an assertion I am ready to demonstrate and to defend anywhere. There is no other view of life in this world tonight facing men which takes in the whole, takes in everything, save this. The Bible, I say, not only tells us how to live life when the sun is shining and when all is going well. The Bible helps us to face life when everything seems to have gone wrong, when the tribulations and the trials and the catastrophes and the calamities come. The Bible still goes on speaking. The novels don't help you then. The jazz music is no use then. All the so-called romance of the films, oh, it seems so tawdry and insulting when you're face to face with these basic and elemental things. Didn't you feel it during this past week? How you'd have liked to have changed some of the BBC programs, how ridiculous they seemed, when men and women were face to face with ultimate things. Now, I say the Bible tells us that it and it alone can face all these various things. And what we have in this particular chapter that we're looking at tonight is the Bible helping us and enabling us to face the calamities that come in life, the disasters, the terrible events that happen. You remember the description that is given here of them, how these men came one after another to Job with their reports of terrible things that had taken place. You remember the last one, while he was yet speaking, there came also another and said, "Thy sons and thy daughters were eating and drinking wine in their eldest brother's house, and behold, there came a great wind from the wilderness and smote the four corners of the house, and it fell upon the young men, and they are dead. And I alone am escaped, and I only am escaped alone to tell." One by one they came, telling him of the destruction of his animals, his wonderful possessions, how suddenly he is robbed of everything, and finally his children. That's the theme with which this chapter deals. Now let me make it quite clear as we come to consider it what exactly the chapter does tell us and what we are proposing to do. The chapter is not concerned finally to tell us or to explain to us why these calamities happen. I've no doubt there are many tonight who are considering that. Why do such things take place? Because when terrible things happen, people are very prone to say, why does God allow this? Job's wife put that question. She said, what's the point of going on like this? Then said his wife unto Job, dost thou still retain thine integrity? Curse God and die. And you will find always at such times that people begin to say, well, now, if there is a God, and if God is a God of love, as the Bible claims, why does he allow things like this to take place? That's the thing they want to have discussed. Why do these things happen? The Bible has a great deal to tell us about that subject. And yet, in a way, there is a great deal which it does not tell us about that subject. The teaching of the Bible seems to be that if we put the question in the way that I've just put it to you now, it is nothing but a sheer impertinence. And the last people to have an answer to the question are the people who put it in that way. This whole question is a great one. It's an involved one, and it's a difficult one. And the Bible, I say, doesn't pretend nor offer to give us any final light upon it. It does tell us this much. The teaching of this particular chapter is, of course, as you realize, that the calamity there was produced by Satan. Satan was given certain abilities and powers by God. And here, because of the challenge of Satan concerning Job to God, God says, very well then, test him. And Satan proceeded to do these things that are here described. That is a good deal, as a matter of fact, of the biblical explanation as to why things like this happen. If you want a brief and a succinct answer to the question, why do calamities happen in this world of time? The essential biblical answer is, they happen because of sin. If men had not sinned, if sin and evil had never entered into this world, then we can be absolutely certain that no calamities and troubles would ever have happened or would ever have been experienced. That's the essential biblical teaching. These things are the direct outcome of sin and evil and men's disobedience of God. Disease and pestilence and calamities and all these things have resulted directly from men's disobedience. God made the world perfect. He called it paradise. He saw that it was good, and nothing like this could have happened in it. All these things are the direct outcome of sin. So, my friend, if you're concerned about this problem, I suggest to you that instead of trying to understand God, you'd better try to understand the problem of sin. That's the essence of the biblical explanation of these matters. Let me go further. The Bible does not promise us anywhere that these things are not going to happen. That is why it is an utter travesty of the gospel to say that it's some sort of soothing syrup which tells people, believe this and you'll never have any more troubles. Or because God is a God of love, anything's never going to go wrong. Not at all. The Bible tells us that there will be wars and rumors of wars and earthquakes and pestilences and calamities. The Bible tells us very plainly and clearly that while there is sin left in this world, things like this are going to happen. So that anybody who believes the Bible and who's a Christian should never be surprised at these things. And it is only people who are ignorant of the biblical teaching who seem to think that at last they've got an unanswerable case against God. They say, you proclaim a God who's a God of love, look what happens. The Bible tells you both. It tells you that these things are going to happen because of evil and because of sin. Indeed, we can go further and say this. From the biblical standpoint, it seems to me, the remarkable thing is that worse things don't happen. Think what you feel like doing to somebody who does something against you. Think of the things we've often done to people who've hurt us or offended us. Oh, yes, we all know something about killing Kruger with our mouths. The amazing thing, I say, is this, that the holy, righteous, and eternal God tolerates men as he does. That he long since hasn't wiped man and his entire universe out of existence. That is surely the extraordinary and surprising thing, that God can still cause his sun to rise upon the evil and the good, and send rain upon the just and the unjust. The amazing thing is that God gives such health and strength and prosperity and powers to men who ignore him and who even curse him to his face. That's the problem to me. That's the amazing thing. Not that calamities do happen or are permitted by God to happen at times, but that they happen so infrequently, and that God is so amazingly good and so amazingly kind to mankind. Very well, then, I say the Bible teaches us that these things will happen, that there will never be a time in the world when they will not happen until the Son of God finally returns into this world and once and forever finishes with sin and evil and returns the perfect kingdom to his Father. The Bible, in other words, is not so much concerned about that aspect of the matter as this. What are we to do about these things? How are we to face them? If I say we are living in a world in which this sort of thing can happen at any moment, and we know not when, well, how can we face them? How can we bring ourselves to meet these things? That's the question. That's the practical question. I say that you and I are never going to understand the problem of evil fully while we're in this life and in this world. It's beyond us entirely. It's a great mystery in the mind and the heart of God. But there is a very practical problem, and we should address ourselves to it. In view of the fact that I'm subject to this sort of thing at any moment, how can I prepare myself so that if ever I am met with this sort of thing, I shall never be taken unawares and unprepared, but shall always be ready for it? That's the theme of this chapter. And I would remind you that it's but a typical illustration and example of what the Bible has to teach us in this connection. Job is but one illustration of large numbers which I could put before you, which are to be found in the Old Testament and in the New. The case of the Bible is this, that in this life and in this world, where we are subject to all these things, where we are constantly at the mercy, as it were, of these things to which flesh is heir, the world can be divided into two groups. There are people who are completely shattered by them, people who don't understand them, who are baffled and bewildered, and who, if they think at all, I say, are utterly baffled, or else perhaps decide not to think at all because thinking is painful. There are people who are in some shape or form just defeated completely by them. On the other hand, there are people like this man Job, who, when the most terrible disasters happen to them, simply seem to stand like great mountain peaks in the midst of the storm, with a dignity and a greatness, a superiority to it all that is truly glorious and magnificent. That's the great theme of the Bible. There are people like this who triumph over it all, who can be more than conquerors. You've got a great list of them in the 11th chapter of the Epistle to the Hebrews, but you can go through the Old Testament and find them for yourselves, and they're all the same. The same explanation is true of every single one of them. It isn't that one man had a particular secret and another. No. These men all behave in the same way for the same reason. It's always the one and the same explanation. And the question is, what is that explanation? Now, that's the thing I want to put to you briefly tonight, as it is put to us in this first chapter of the book of Job. And fortunately here it seems to me to be put in the form of a contrast. There is a kind of implied contrast in this chapter, as I understand it, between Job himself and Job's children. And in Job's children and Job himself, I think you have depicted and delineated in a very perfect way these two final fundamental attitudes to life and all its attendant circumstances, and especially its calamities. And all I want to do, therefore, is to hold these two pictures before you and just comment upon them as we look at them together. First of all, let us take a brief glance at Job's children. The same thing, alas, was true of Job's wife as was true of the children, in a sense. But at any rate, we know this very well about the children of Job. We realize very clearly what their attitude was to life. It was a thoughtless one. It was heedless. It was unprepared. I'm not judging them, I'm simply describing them. It's quite clear that these people, these children of Job, were indeed very typical and representative modern people in many ways. Their one idea was to have the so-called good time. You can read about them and see their photographs almost every evening in some of the evening papers at their drinks and dances and great occasions, with their wonderful dresses, how bright and glorious and amazing it seems. Well, Job's children were like that, always having parties. They seemed to live to plan parties. And off they went. They didn't think much of anything else but having the next party. Whose turn was it? And they all went together, and there they were drinking their wine and having a marvelous and amazing good time. But we are told here, it seems to me very, very clearly, that they didn't think much about life because their father, who knew them so well, we are told, used to pray for them and used to offer his sacrifices. He used to say, "It may be that my sons have sinned and cursed God." In their hearts, he was worried about them. He was unhappy about them. He could see this typical, thoughtless attitude towards life, this mere living for pleasures and for the next thing that came along and turned up, and he said, "Oh, I'm afraid of them. In this drunken condition, with this wine of theirs, they may have said something that'll lead to an estrangement between them and God." So he prayed for them and offered his sacrifices. That seems to me to be the picture of Job's children. Oh, we are given many accounts of such people in the Bible. Listen to our Lord himself describing this kind of person. "As it was," he says, "in the days of Noah, they were eating and drinking and marrying and giving in marriage, building and planting houses, and knew not until the flood came and took them all away." That's how people were before the flood, exactly as the majority seem to be today. Eating, drinking, marrying, giving in marriage, planning, settling down houses. How marvelous it all seems. Never a thought about these things. The flood comes suddenly, and it's all over before you know where you are, and you haven't time to put yourself right with God or really face the ultimate questions of life and eternity. It was exactly the same before Sodom and Gomorrah, according to our Lord himself. Well, I don't want to stay with this. But there it is, I say, in its essence, in Job's unthinking, heedless children who were just out for a good time, whose whole philosophy was, make the best of it while you've got it. Don't go to meet troubles. Don't be serious and don't think. Spend all your money. Don't consider the next day. Live from hand to mouth. Just have a jolly good time while you can. That's it. That's the attitude. I don't want to go on to say that often coupled with that, there is a ridicule poured upon people who do stop to think. And those of us who are Christian are regarded as, just out of date and behind the times and rather hopeless, antiquated persons, some sort of anachronisms in this modern world. There it is. And suddenly, in the midst of the jollification and the feasting, a gale arises out of a desert and comes, and before they know what's happened, they're dead. That's the picture. It's not for me to condemn that attitude to life, but I just want to hold opposite to that a most amazing contrast. It's the contrast of this man, Job. Here he is, messengers come in one after another, telling him of the loss of all his goods and possessions, and finally the death of all his children. And then I read this. I think it's one of the most magnificent and tremendous pictures which you'll find in any literature anywhere, even in the Bible itself, as a picture of sheer dignity and greatness and calmness and poise and balance and equanimity. It's unmatched. Then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head and fell upon the ground and worshipped and said, naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. Now, I confess, there's one thing I can't understand. How anybody can look even cursorily and superficially at these two pictures and not at once and inevitably feel that for every reason the second must be the right one. Why, if Christianity were not true, I'd have to believe it. The other seems so hopeless to me, so superficial. And then there's such a greatness and a magnificence about this. But I don't want to leave it as a general picture. I want to show you how the Scripture itself analyzes the whole thing for us. The great question is, how can we be like Job? How can we become such men and women when, though the worst should happen to us and our whole world may collapse round about us, we can rise up like a great mountain peak out of it all and stand there looking to God and to heaven, unmoved and undisturbed? Well, here are the explanations given in the Scriptures. What was Job's secret? Well, the first thing that I'm told about Job is this, that he had a right attitude towards himself and a right attitude towards his life in this world. You see, the first words this man utters are these. Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. Now, in effect, he said this. Here I am, said Job. An hour ago, I was the wealthiest man in the world. I'd got more sheep and cattle and camels than anybody else. I had these children of mine. My world seemed an absolutely perfect one in every respect. But suddenly I find myself bereft of everything. All my goods and possessions and my children have gone. What is this life of mine? What am I? What is this world in which I find myself? What is it all about? I've suddenly lost everything. Well, then, has everything gone? Have I gone with it? No, says Job, I haven't. And he rises up out of it all. And then he immediately thinks of God, so he falls prostrate to the ground, and he looks up and he speaks and he says, God, I thank thee that thou hast taught me the truth about myself and about my life in this world. What is it? Well, it's this. We come into this world with nothing except ourselves. That's how everybody's life starts. You start with nothing but yourself. You haven't a single possession. You have nothing except the soul that God has given you. That's all you've got. You've got this amazing thing that God has given you in your little body. That's exactly what you are and all you have.
You're absolutely naked. You've got nothing at all. Not a shred, not a vestige of a garment of any description. Totally naked. And it's equally true to say, as Job reminds us here, that every single one of us will go out of the world exactly like that. Now, I can't understand anybody, I say again, who doesn't realize this. I still less can understand anybody who objects to it or wants to argue with it. The astounding thing is how any one of us can live for a single day without realizing that simple truth. But isn't this what happens to all of us? We come like that naked into this world, then immediately we begin to accumulate things. I'm given a rattle or a dummy or a doll, and it's mine. And I don't want anybody else to have it. Then I see another child with one, and I want that one as well. You're fighting for possessions always. If every man in the world realized this, there'd never be another war, because people would see at once that nothing's worth fighting about in an ultimate sense. You're fighting for possessions always. Not only would you and I and our lives be different, but the whole world would very soon be different. And what's the point of fighting for things that you may be robbed of in a second? Things that you're certainly going to be robbed of by death at the end. So all jealousy and rivalry and envy, because somebody else is getting a bigger wage or salary or is more prominent in his profession, or all these things would go, because a man would say to himself, they're not worth it. I myself will soon be left with nothing. So will all they. No, there is no hope in conferences. There's no hope in marching. There's no hope in moral influence. There's no hope in legislation. There's no hope in all the affairs of men. But here is a hope. Here is light. The universe is still God's. God made it, and God has not abandoned it. The world is going to be changed. It's going to be redeemed. There is to be a regeneration of the whole cosmos. And it is the activity of this Christ that does it. He didn't come to tell us to be better. We can't be better. He didn't come to give us an example. He came to do something for us. And what he has done, I say he has done. The world is as it is because of the darkness. And he has come to dispel the darkness. The light to lighten the Gentiles hath appeared. The day star from on high hath arisen. The light of God has come into the world. And the darkness shall be finally dissipated and dispelled. And Jesus shall reign where'er the sun doth his successive journeys run. His kingdom stretch from shore to shore, till moons shall wax and wane no more. There is no other hope, but there is hope in him. He is the Lord of history. The world is his. The Father has given him the kingdom, and he will finish the work. He came. He did the preliminary work. He is waiting until his enemy shall be made his footstool. He will come again, riding the clouds of heaven, and destroy his every enemy, his every foe, and set up his everlasting kingdom. That's what he tells us. That is his message about the world this evening. He is the light of the world. He is the only light. Man cannot save the world. Man cannot change it. History is proving it. The world tonight is proving it. Look at it. There is no hope. But here is the hope, the blessed hope, the coming again of the Son of God to finish the work and finally to hand the kingdom perfect and entire to his Holy Father. That is the message with regard to the world in general. What of you? Where do you come in all this? Are you in that world? Are you in the dark? If you are and you die like that, you'll suffer the fate of the darkness and of the fallen world. But you notice that he indicates there is a way out. He that followeth me shall not walk in the darkness, but shall have the light of life. My dear friend, you can be rescued and redeemed out of this fallen, sinful, doomed world this evening. You pin your faith to world reformation and you'll go down in despair with the world and you'll be lost. But you needn't. Though the world cannot be saved in that sense, you can. You can be saved out of this present evil world. The Christ who came to conquer Satan and to dispel the darkness came to save you. He not only took human nature upon himself, he took our sins upon himself. He bore their punishment. He died our death. He has risen again for our justification. He has gone into heaven to prepare a place for us. That is the message. The world cannot be better. It is mastered by this darkness, the darkness of the devil and of hell, and there is only one light that can set us free from it and show us the way to God. He is the one. He doesn't tell you to save yourself. He tells you that he saves you. It isn't his teaching. It's what he's done. I and I alone am the light. He's taken your nature. He's taken your sin. He's taken your punishment. He's been buried in your grave. He's risen. He's interceding for you. He, the Christ himself. Not slogans, not philosophy, not teaching, not ideas. I and I alone, the person, am the light of the world. Are you following him? Are you walking in his light? Are you looking only unto him and resting upon him and his finished work? And are you looking for his blessed, his glorious appearing and the final glorious consummation? Thank God, we are not left to ourselves. We are not left to men, however great and noble and wonderful. God is interested. God loves the world. God has so loved it that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish, but have everlasting life. Have you got it? Turn to the light. Look to him. And be ye saved. Amen.